There's a waterlogged drunk in the morgue, involuntary manslaughter if anybody wants to take the trouble, which they don't. It seems like half the city is trying to cover it all up, which is fine by me. But Mrs. Mulwray, I goddamn near lost my nose, and I like it. I like breathing through it. And I still think that you're hiding something.
In 1974, we got one of those rare moments in cinema that sees a massive collision of talent coming together and hitting its creative peak on one project. Made in the 70s, but perfectly recreating the feel of the late 30s, it's one of film's great works, and that comes in the middle of a decade renowned for churning out jaw-dropping masterpieces left, right and centre. Roman Polanski's crime thriller, Chinatown. Hi everyone, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews and welcome to the channel. I didn't have a review for this film lined up or planned in, but I recently rewatched it and wow, it is so good. It's one of my personal favourite films of all time and I'm really looking forward to chatting to you about 1974's Chinatown. At its core, Chinatown is the story of a shady plot to control the Los Angeles power supply by stealing its water, and begins with Jack Nicholson's private eye, Gittes, being hired by a mysterious woman to spy on her unfaithful husband, Hollis Mulwray, chief engineer of the city's water department.
What seems to be the problem?
My husband, I believe, is seeing another woman.
However, all is not what it seems, and it's not long before Faye Dunaway arrives on the scene as the real Mrs. Mulwray to send the film veering off into a different direction entirely.
You see, I'm Mrs. Evelyn Mulwray. You know Mr. Mulwray's wife?
Not, that Mulwray.
Yes, Mr. Gittes, that Mulwray.
Not a fan of being duped, Nicholson chooses to dig deeper into the case, and as he does so, stumbles upon political corruption, sexual cruelty, murder, and a bizarre plot involving nursing home residents unknowingly owning some of Los Angeles' most valuable land. All of which eventually lands him at the door of Dunaway's father, the slimy millionaire Noah Cross, an imposing John Huston. It's here that events twist and turn before screeching headfirst into a "what the hell have I just seen" style climax. There's a point in the film where Huston actually warns Nicholson.
You may think you know what you're dealing with, but believe me, you don't.
And he's dead right. Directed by the infamous Roman Polanski, and fresh off his take of Macbeth and the horror masterpiece Rosemary's Baby, he recreates a Los Angeles of 1937 so well that if the film was in black and white, you'd probably swear it was made then too. A huge part of this is down to Jerry Goldsmith's excellent music, which fits the film so perfectly it's amazing to think that the film's score was originally composed by Philip Lambro. That score was rejected at the last minute, giving Goldsmith just 10 days to put together the soundtrack for this film. The film's screenplay was written for his friend Jack Nicholson by renowned screenwriter Robert Towne. He'd knock out a screenplay that was an attempt to make a film that threw back to the old Hollywood gumshoe detective tales where someone like Humphrey Bogart would go sniffing around for clues. However, and thankfully for cinema, it ended up transcending that and became one of the most complex and bleakest tales of the American dream gone wrong ever.
See, Mr. Gittes, most people never have to face the fact that at the right time and the right place, they're capable of anything.
Yet despite that bleak tone, this really is one of those films that you can watch multiple times and still discover new clues to the mystery. There haven't been many crime thrillers, probably since Chinatown, that have dared to be this challenging and complex. There are puzzles and pieces dangled in front of us throughout the film and plot tangents that could legitimately go off and become standalone movies of their own. Which doesn't detract from it, and despite this though, it remains thoroughly entertaining, which in huge part is down to its small but amazing cast. Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway, who both share more than impressive CVs, put in some of their greatest work here. Props to Nicholson, who has to act over a garish white plaster for most of the film after coming to blows with a hoodlum, played by the director himself.
You know what happens to nosy fellows? Huh? No? Wanna guess? Huh? No? Okay. They lose their noses.
This was a golden time for Jack Nicholson. He'd obviously go off and continue with an amazing career, but this was one of the last films before he became the Jack Nicholson that springs to mind when he's mentioned, you know, the wide-eyed, grinning loony of films like The Shining, Batman and The Departed. And Faye Dunaway, who was probably the actress of the 70s, starring in this, The Towering Inferno, 3 Days of the Condor and Network within a few years of each other. Here she goes through an entire spectrum of despair, from damaged femme fatale to desperate and defeated during the film's gut punch twist, as she reveals the true depths of her relationship to a manipulative and vicious father in an all too realistic scene of domestic violence.
She's my sister. She's my daughter. My sister, my daughter.
I said I want the truth!
So 3 years prior to Chinatown, director Roman Polanski's pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, had been brutally killed by the Manson family, a fact which, understandably, deeply affected Polanski and soured his worldview to such a degree that he struggled to give the film anything but a dark and fatalistic climax. In fact, Polanski and Towne argued at length over giving the film an upbeat ending, the director eventually winning out with the final 5 minutes that completely poleaxes Jack Nicholson's hardened detective.
Take him home. Take him home! Just get him the hell out of here! Go home, Jake.
Almost as if to lengthen the shadow of the film, a few years after the release of Chinatown, its director was arrested and charged with sexual offences against a 13-year-old girl, fleeing to France to avoid imprisonment. The 1975 Oscars saw Chinatown only win for Robert Towne's Best Original Screenplay, despite being nominated for most other major awards that night. The night itself belonged to The Godfather Part 2, and if you're going to lose out to any film, there's no shame in losing to The Godfather Part 2. Chinatown is probably one of, if not the greatest detective films ever made. Nicholson and Dunaway would be staples of 70s cinema, a fiendish turn from John Huston, who himself came with a pedigree of directing some of Hollywood's great works, and Polanski, a director who'd never make a better film. But to be fair, not many directors have made a better film. Go check it out.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.